to get started. Welcome to the 2022 art market meeting. If I accidentally call this a farmer's market, don't be offended. It's just because that is my full-time job, is doing farmer's market. And we are adding art market, which we are really excited about. And so it's a pretty informal meeting, but we are going to go over some rules or guidelines. And then I do want this to be a conversation. So if you have any questions, any comments, any feedback, we want to hear it. So in 2020 is when kind of the art market started, and that was I was telling what was your name again? Cindy. I was telling Cindy that the art market kind of came about during COVID because at the time artists were applying to be a part of the farmers market, but because of the restrictions put on place for events, I wasn't able to accept a lot of vendors. Our footprint basically got cut in half because of the social distancing. But we had this field that is across the street from the square that was sitting vacant, and we decided that we wanted to activate that with artists specifically. And so halfway through 2020, we started the art market, and then that continued into last year. And we were able to do the full season out on the field. And finally, I think they're starting construction. Sorry, my husband just texted me that my daughter is addicted to cheese, which she's, if you haven't met my baby, you will. She is 10 months old. She looks exactly like my husband. But the fact that she loves cheese means that she is my daughter. So I'm quite proud of that fact. But so this year is 2020. So even though this is our third season, second and a half season, we are, it still feels kind of like a new market. In 2020, Tracy was the one organizing it. It's 2022. Tracy started the market in 2020, and then Andrew took it over last year, and that was just because I was having a baby and leaving on maternity leave, and we couldn't put the person that we hired to fill my role in charge of too many things, just because that wouldn't have been fair to her or to you guys. So Andrew took over the market last year, and now you guys have me again. So yay. I don't know if you guys can see the chat, but if you are on the Zoom, feel free to, if you have any questions, you can use the chat box. There's not too many of us, so I think Andrew might have you all on mute, but if you do have a question, use the chat box. All right, so see if I can, yay, market staff. So there's me. And we also have Sydney, who, if you are in person, she let you in the door. She is going to be the boots on the ground, especially during setup and teardown. So if you arrive at the market and are trying to figure out where you set up, try to find Sydney. We also just hired somebody for the farmers market, and her name is Ashley. She's going to be doing more farmers market activations, but she just might be somebody that you'll see helping Sydney out. Sydney, do you want to say hi to your friends on Zoom? So yeah, that's the market staff. We also have another volunteer named Michelle, and she is, again, primarily on the farmers market side. But if you are setting up and somebody shows up that looks like one of us, and they tell you you are in the wrong spot or need to move, or if you're looking for somebody to help you, that would be us. My phone number is on the screen. You can call or text this number. Sydney also, it's a Google phone, and so Sydney will also have access to the phone calls and the text messages. I think we figured the text messaging thing out. So if it is 5 o'clock on a Saturday and I'm not there, you can still call this number and Sydney will be able to pick up. Andrew asked, will you be sending this presentation out later? Yes. You'll get the deck and the video. If you are a note taker, continue to take notes. But if you're not and you want to refer back to it later, we're going to get you all this information. We have a new office. So if you were part of the art market last year, you will notice that our old office is now an art gallery. And that is thanks to Matt, who we have talked about already. So we are now upstairs. So if you if you see the Coca-Cola mural on Main Street, there's this unmarked door, and that is the door to our office. We are going to try to get some signage for it. But if you open the door and you see a very tall, obnoxious staircase, that will lead into this living room. That's where you can find us if you need to visit us in the office. But yeah, that's just some housekeeping. All right, so here are last year's numbers. They were pretty sporadic, and let's see. Does somebody have their microphone on? We're getting some static.
We should be good now.
Okay. Was it you, Andrew?
No.
So yeah, these are the sales, and like I said before, we started mid through 2020, and so we don't have much historical data. I did try to throw in the half of 2020, but it's just, these are kind of hard numbers to look at just because it is so sporadic, and I think that is partially just because of weather. Our outdoor events are really weather dependent, and weather also affects attendance, and so I think that's why you can see some of those really large spikes. But the art market has been really successful, and my goal this year is to have a little bit more consistency in sales, and where, again, like I said, that is dependent on weather, but fingers crossed we're going to have a great year. Last year, I'll go over the attendance policy and the weather policy, but last year we had 7 modified markets, and basically what that means is that those were markets that were affected by the weather, and I think that those are pretty, you can pretty much tell which 7 weeks those were. But yeah, does anybody have any questions about sales or?
How many artists would you say has had in the last?
Yeah, Andrew, can you answer that? Do you know how many artists?
I would say on average, let's say 12. It seemed like the group as a whole did a lot better when there were more artists on the field. So by having more artists set up on the field, I think it just became more visual and people would be more attracted to that area. So some of these could be attendance related as well. I know there are a lot of other events that take place in the area, which took some of our artists away, and they could be some of these dips also.
Yeah, that's a good question.
I think the new location is huge.
Yeah. Matt says he thinks the new location is going to make a difference.
I really do.
I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm there.
Where's it going to be? That is to be disclosed.
Couple more slides.
Yeah, just hold on. So I did want this. These are the farmers market numbers, and I wanted to include these just to have you guys also see the visual that even the farmers market sales, they're very up and down. Again, this is just weather. Outside events, sometimes it rains. But last year, our farmers market brought in $1.2 million, which is absolutely crazy. That is historic for any downtown event that we know of. And that is, we want the art market to merge into the farmers market a little bit more seamlessly this year. And so basically what this means is that we have tons of people who are coming downtown to shop our events. And so we want you guys to be excited and also proud of the square and where we're going to be setting up. But this should get you guys excited about all the people who are coming to shop our events. And it might put the pressure on a little bit. We do have tons of people. There's lots of opportunity. And I think like with any event, what you put in, you'll receive that back. So if you are setting up and you're displaying your work, that you're out there, you're talking to people, this is an area that's really, really receptive to local crafters and makers and artists. And so, part of this is what, we're able to bring the people, and the rest is kind of up to you guys to make the most of that situation and this market and opportunity. Andrew, do you have anything else to say?
No, I mean,
about
I would
last
just say once again that last year was a banner year for us. 1.3 million or nearly 1.3 million. We never in our wildest dreams thought we were going to hit that number. The best year that the market ever had in the history of the market, and I think it's been around for 50 plus years maybe, was 2019, and that was 835,000. So
Yeah,
we added
yeah.
what, 500,000 on top of the best year we ever had. If you look at those weekly numbers, I mean, almost every week was record breaking for us. Previous to last year, the best week we had was what, Stephanie, like 38,000 in one weekend, and 42,000 in one weekend, and almost 17 of our weekends last year exceeded the highest weekend we had ever had previously. So my board is really excited that they think we're going to hit these numbers again. I would love to hit these numbers again. I don't know necessarily why we hit these numbers. I think a lot of it goes back to Stephanie and making sure that she's selecting the vendors that people want, that are selling supplies that they want. But this does not include the art market numbers. So when you add the art market numbers in, that even puts us higher than what we see here. So people want to spend money when they come out on Saturdays. So you have to just figure out the best way to get their money.
Yeah.
How is it marketed? Do you advertise the art market? Because I attend the farmers market for years. And what about the art market?
Yeah. The question was, how is the art market advertised?
Yeah. Go ahead. You want to answer it, Seth? Or?
Oh, I was just going to say that we actually hired somebody for communications at some point last year, right?
Yeah, Dana started at the beginning of last year.
Yeah, and so we have somebody who is on staff full time doing our communications, which we haven't necessarily had that in the past. I feel like we have often marketed the art market in conjunction with the farmers market, and that's something that we want to continue to do this year. Dana has put together these really awesome blog posts, and those basically get picked up by the media as well. They're kind of these like what to expect at our events, and we're wanting to continue that through some of the farmers markets as well. We have a really strong reach on social media. We have a really strong reach through our newsletter. Even through LinkedIn. I don't know how we market on LinkedIn, but apparently that's a thing, and we have really strong numbers on LinkedIn as well. I think we have over 20,000 people who follow us on Instagram, and we push, obviously a lot of our events through our social media. And then we do have at event signage, we have art market flags, art market signage that we put out at the event to try to direct people down to where, last year it was on the field, and this year it's going to be in a new cool location. So yeah, there are going to be signage at the events as well.
Yeah, we advertise the same routes that we go for First Fridays and farmers markets. We do advertise for the art market. So like Stephanie mentioned, our social media reach is actually 80,000 between all the platforms that we have. We have a weekly newsletter that goes out every Friday that says 4 things to do this weekend. That has about 10,000. recipients on that. We had digital billboards in downtown that we put billboards up talking about the art market. So like Stephanie says, we think there's a benefit for grouping the two together, because if you get somebody to come out to the farmers market, they can very easily wander across the street and visit with the art market as well. The fact that we have the gallery on the square, which Matt manages, is just another way of kind of promoting what's going on. If you all have additional ideas, let us know. We also have a weekly television show on NBC on Saturday mornings at 8:30 called Downtown Now. It's a 30-minute show that we produce, and we do stories on it. We've done a story on Matt. We've done a story on a couple of the artists in the past, but we're going to use that storytelling platform to also do some commercials about the events that we're doing as well. So we do have some additional marketing materials in the works for this coming up season.
Yeah.
So if we're outside, can we upload pictures of the day when we're out there? Or does it
Absolutely.
person?
No, I mean, we strongly encourage that. You know, some of our vendors do so well because they have their own following. So just going on Instagram stories the day of, as soon as you get your tent set up, and go live or put some pictures up and say, hey, if you're a fan of mine, I'm going to be at the market today or the art market today in downtown Bentonville. Come out and see me. That's, you know, a lot of our vendors, I think you would all be surprised. Our #1 revenue vendor in the entire market is the Macaroon Producer. All she makes is macaroons. It's bigger than our meat producer. It's bigger than anybody else. But the fact is, she is very active on social media. She has a following. She makes sure everybody knows that if they want to get her macaroons, they have to go to the farmer's market and pick them up. So we encourage that very much, to do it on your own platforms as well.
Yeah. And 80,000, that is a really large reach. But, you know, there are lots of people who live in this area, and obviously we can't connect with all of them. And so we also want to empower you and to encourage you to, like what Andrew said, have your own platforms, have your own reach, create your own relationships with the customers. Again, like, this experience and these opportunities are what you make of them. So yeah, and we will create certain assets throughout the year that you can post on your social media. And then we really, Dana does a really good job on Saturday mornings that if you do tag us in Instagram stories, we'll repost those. So there are opportunities for us to promote what you're putting out there as well, especially on Saturday mornings. All right, so we're going to move on. Okay, so here's the new location. We are actually going to be out on Main Street. So this is the preliminary map. I've actually made 1 or 2 changes to it. So if you are more of a visual person, this is overlooking, this is the square. Those of us in this room, we are right here. So actually out this window, we are going to be down Main Street. So down where the Coca-Cola mural is, all the way down Main Street to 2nd Street. So this is where we are going to be hosting the art market, which we are excited about. Something to note is that we are also sharing this space with the local businesses on Main Street. So in order for this to get approved through the city, we basically had to go door to door with all the businesses and get them to sign off on it. So that was a little bit more challenging than we thought it was going to be. So we did work really hard to secure this location. Something about it, though, is that there is not electricity. If you absolutely have to have electricity, there's one spot. There's going to be a feedback form for you guys to fill out at the end of this meeting. And if you are somebody who basically all of your sales are going to be dependent on having access to electricity, I need to know that. My husband was a part of the art market a long time ago in 2020, and he sold lamps. He made lamps. And so he would have been somebody who really needed electricity. He's not doing it anymore, so don't worry. He's not going to fight you if you need electricity. And he would not get preferential treatment just because. Want to make that clear. But yeah, so if that is something that you have to have, you need to let me know. I have some farmers market vendors who want to be next to electricity because they want a fan. That's not going to fly in the art market. We would all love to have fans. Unless you're selling artistic fans, then yeah, no electricity.
We don't anticipate a lot of stores coming back out. Can you go back one? I mean, or one that lists the stores. Like, I think Moose Jaw will probably come out and set a tent up. Southern Boutique may, Tap Room may, to get people to come in and have like a morning mimosa. But we actually think that's going to benefit a lot of this area, because the more active we make this look, the more people will be drawn in. And another plus of this is, and I don't know if you can point to it, but there is the largest parking garage in Bentonville will be opening at some point during the season south of this area. So everybody who parks in that multi-deck parking garage is going to be walking down this street to get to the square. So we'll have a lot more foot traffic.
Yeah, we get people who ask us all the time, how many people attend your events? And there's absolutely no way for us to calculate how many people attend our events, just because the word porous isn't, but like people can come to the square from so many different directions that there's no way to capture who's coming in from where. But that's a good thing that people are coming from all different directions. And that means that there's not one spot that everybody's funneling in through. So this is, again, this is a picture of the map. And I tried, let's see. Oh, I can't zoom in. I'm sorry. So we have basically everybody on this meeting. You're either a full-time vendor or a part-time vendor. So I'm going to be talking to two groups here. The gray boxes indicate the spots that I've set aside for full-time. And these yellow ones are the spots that I've set aside for part-time vendors. So the full-time vendors, you span across 3 sessions, and these sessions, the dates are listed here. And something that I wanted to pitch to the group, and not to necessarily open it up for discussion right now, but on that feedback form, there's a question. It has been brought up that our full-time spots at the market might not be equitable, just because of spacing. But basically, I want to make sure that everybody feels heard and that their feedback is taken into account. So if you are a full-time vendor, there are 3 sessions. And there's option 1, which is that you would have the same spot for the entire season, or option 2, is that you could potentially, your spot would change each session. So I'll repeat that, just make sure I'm clear. So the 2 options are that you would have one spot for the entire year, or your spot would change per 10-week session. So, and that is, again, we just want to make sure that we're being fair to everybody, if that seems like something that might not be fair. Am I making sense? I feel like that. Okay.
You are. So you'll be sending out a questionnaire afterwards, and that's going to be a question on there. Do you think that every spot should stay the same for the entire summer or the entire year? Or do you think the spots should change each session, which means you go through 3 changes?
That's only for full-time vendors. For part-time vendors, your spots are going to change no matter what, just because you are part-time. So each time that you are participating in the market, your spot is most likely going to be different. Yeah. So that's just geared towards, that question's pointed towards the full-time vendors.
We have heard that Matt is selling spots. If you bought a spot from Matt, he stole your money. Just giving you a heads up on that.
Yes. And
Bought a spot from that. He stole your money.
Yeah, we should
So
do a raise of hands. How many people has Matt told a spot in the market?
Not on video. I turned my video off.
yeah, that says we're full. No, Matt, there's a fire sale going on spots right now. So something to note is that full-time vendors, you guys don't know what your spot locations are. So nobody is filling out that form or answering that question knowing where their location is. So we want to keep that fair, just across the board. Also to the point of, this is a joke about Matt selling spots, but I do want to be clear that I am the market manager. So I'm the person who is deciding spots. So if there were certain deals made outside of me, those are not valid. Also, there's a rumor going around that I have favorites, or that there are people who are on the inside who are getting special treatment. That is not true. I feel like that, yeah, Matt's like, trust me, I know. Yeah, so nobody's getting special treatment. Like if you're an artist in the gallery, that doesn't mean that you have preference, or that you're getting something over somebody who isn't an artist in the gallery. If you're a part-time vendor, you're still going to be equally as taken care of as the full-time vendors. So I don't want any of that circulating. There are no favorites. I love all my children equally. So yeah, if you are a part-time vendor, like I said, your spots will change weekly. And I would love to get your preferred schedule. And this is, again, on that feedback form, your preferred schedule for the first session, which is April 9th through June 11th. These are the dates that you are available and that you would like to participate. I have been the farmers market manager since 2019. So this is my 4th season, and every year I have handled part-time vendors differently. And the reason being is that it's just kind of a beast. Like I have, on the farmers market side, I have 60 to 70 full-time vendors. And then I also have 30 to 40 part-time vendors, and juggling all those schedules is a lot to manage and is a lot to have in just one space. And so to you on the outside looking in, you might be like, this doesn't make any sense, or I don't understand this system. That's okay. I'm just trying to do what is best for my organization. Again, I am just one person. And when you have 120 people emailing you their schedule, it can be difficult, especially if you keep changing your availability. So we are going to be doing schedules for part-time people on a session by session basis. So just select the dates that you are available and that you would like to participate, and I will do my best to honor those dates. Please know that just because that is your preferred schedule doesn't mean that it is your schedule. So there was some confusion about that when we had the market at record. People were signing up for dates, and then I would send out a schedule, and they were confused that they weren't on a date that they had said they wanted to participate, but it was because I didn't have space that particular date. So when I send out your schedule, please print that off, put it on your refrigerator, write it in your date book. Those are the dates that I have on the books for you to participate. And I am going off of the dates that you sent me. So yeah, in that feedback form, you'll be able to select which ones. So we also, for the farmers market, we run into situations where a full-time vendor won't be able to participate. And that means that I will draw from the part-time vendor list. So there are going to be, potential dates where a full-time artist might not be able to make it, and they will have told me ahead of time. So then I know I need to fill that spot with a part-time vendor. So, and how that works is that basically if you have open availability on that date, you're going to be kind of put into a short list, and I'll say, hey, there's a spot opening up. Are you interested in it? And then that spot is going to be first come, first serve, based on that list. So I don't want you to think that you have to have all your weekends open on the off chance that you might get one of these extra spots. If you're on that short list, and because you said you had availability this week, and then plans change and you don't have availability, that's not going to reflect negatively on you. I understand that you have a life, but again, I don't want to be bugging people on dates that they know they're already booked for. So yeah, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm so proud of myself. I'm making so much sense tonight. Does anybody have any questions?
When you sign up, so you can say, I want the whole year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's the full-time status. And then, so yeah.
It's not there's 3, 1, 2, 3. So you're not saying I want session 1 as a full-time.
No.
You're saying I want the whole.
Right.
From now to the end of October.
Right. Yep. That's a good question. To clarify, if you signed up to be a full-time vendor, that means that you are signed up to participate April 9th through October 29th. This isn't session by session. I know there was one artist who reached out to me. I'm sorry. Like I said, there's so many people that I email. You said that you wanted to participate the first session and the third session, and I'll be able to accommodate that. That just means that your spot for the second session will turn into a part-time spot, so then I can start scheduling part-time vendors in that location.
So that would be like a fill. Let's say I want the year, and you fill those, whatever that span is.
Right. Yeah.
And Stephanie, are you offering a discount if people want to do the entire year and they pay for it all up front?
Yeah, I mean, we can.
No, aren't we doing that?
Huh?
Aren't we doing the full session 15% off?
Sure, we're doing it now.
Oh boy, Andrew.
Yeah. Andrew, I asked you about this 3 times and you said no. So I feel like I'm not trying to throw you under the bus right now.
No, I thought because we had specifically said we were going to extend the date since the farmers market, they were due the 8th when we said it, because we were going to say it tonight. We were going to extend that date, weren't we, to get the money in? All right, we were crossing our wires, but yes, I would do what we're doing for the farmers market to do that over here as well.
Okay, because I had asked you about that specifically, and I feel like the answer I got was no.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I changed my mind.
Andrew changed his mind. Way to go, guys. We got him in a good mood. If you are a full-time vendor and you are paying for the entire season, if you pay before the season starts, so if you pay on April 8th, your entire fee, you'll get a 15% discount. So the fee structure is $15 a Saturday. So basically that equals out to $450 for the entire year. If you pay on April 8th or before April 8th, you will get a 15% discount, which I think makes it $380 and some change. So I'll get to how to pay those fees later. So that's coming up. But something else on the map that I wanted to talk about is that I'm pretty sure, again, I'm coming from the farmers market world, and something that we have at the market is that we ask people when they're driving to their spot that they unload their car and then go park their car before they start setting up their tent and putting up the things they're going to sell. And that's just something to be respectful to the vendors on either side, so that we're not having traffic jams or people all trying to cram into the same small space. But I understand that you guys are kind of in a different category because a lot of you do pull trailers. A lot of your stuff is heavier. I mean, vegetables are heavy in quantity, but you guys are going to be hanging things that are worth a lot more money, and you're not going to want to necessarily set those on the ground, park your car, and then put up your tent. So because we're not on the field, I feel like the field was great because you could access it through multiple points, and now we're going to be on a street. We're going to vote on this again in the feedback form. If you think we should stagger setup times, basically that would mean that every other spot would be A, and then, you know, the in-between would be spots B, where you'd have an A group and a B group, and A would get there earlier and B would set up later. If you think this is a good idea, we can try it. I just don't want us to be in positions where I'll just use Matt, because I know Matt has a trailer, that he has a long trailer and that he is blocking access to two other artists who are there at the same time. I want to try to foresee that issue and come up with a solution now. So that's something that we are going to vote on. If you think that's a good idea, let's try it. Great. Okay, so here we're going to talk about market locations and fees. So like I said before, I'm the market manager, and I will be assigning all vendor locations. That's my job. No one else, not that I'm trying to claim my territory, but Matt does not give out locations, even though he sold them. No vendor is guaranteed the same space from year to year. And so that, again, is kind of a holdover from the farmer's market. So if next year we do the art market, just because you are in one space this year doesn't mean that you now own that space and that's going to be your space from here until the end of time. We don't guarantee the same space from year to year. Even if you are a full-time vendor, we're not going to come out and say that we guarantee that from week to week, just because things change. We are setting up outside on city property. Something that happened last year at the farmer's market is that there was construction going on and they placed this huge dumpster that took up 4 of my spots. And that's just a circumstance that's unforeseen. So basically, we are giving you the spot to set up, but we're not held responsible if there's unforeseen circumstances and you might be asked to move. You might be asked to move from 1 week just for 1 week, and then you're going to have that spot back again. You might, like I said, you might be asked to relocate due to street closings or special events, or just for market cohesion. Like, we've created this map based off of a measuring stick, and Sydney and I are human beings, and we might have made a mistake and maybe our math was wrong. So we might ask you to move based on that. And let's see, so moving locations is not permitted unless you have permission from me or another on-site representative. So if you show up and there's a bunch of trash in your spot, you might say, hey, Sydney, is there an open spot that I can move to? And she'll help you find that spot. You can't just be like, oh, I'm going to set up to the spot to the left of me. Like, that is most likely somebody else's spot. So market fees will be determined annually. This year, our market fees are $15 a day. I'm not exactly sure what they were last year, but that's the price that my farmers market vendors pay. And so that's the price that you guys are going to pay. And those are going to be invoiced. So if you're a full-time vendor, the invoice is at $450, unless you get the discount. Part-time people, you are going to be invoiced based on your schedule. So that session 1, once you send me your availability, I'll create a schedule, and then you're going to get invoiced for that full session, just all up front. And let's see here. Yes.
How much room is it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Right. Yeah, so Mike asked a really good question. He asked how much space is in between tents. So there's actually 5 feet in between vendor tents. So that's how we set up the farmers market this year. I wanted to, again, reflect that with the art market. We had 10 feet in between spaces because of COVID. And some vendors actually really liked having that extra space just because it gives you a little wiggle room. It does make load in and load out a little bit easier. And if a car parks, again, we're on city property, we're setting up in parking spaces. So there are times where a car might be parked in your spot, and these 5 feet, it gives us some wiggle room where we might need to be setting up tent to tent, and that's kind of built into the footprint.
Are we on the sidewalk then?
No,
In front of the parking area?
we're setting up in the parking spots, not on the sidewalk.
Really?
The sidewalks are, you have to make sure that those are clear for ADA reasons. So somebody with a wheelchair can still use the sidewalks. So we can't be setting up on sidewalks.
It's 382.
Yes, with the 15%, it's 382.50. So yeah, basically this again says that vendor spaces are, part-time vendor spaces are based off of availability. Space is not guaranteed. Payment, I already went over this. It's going to be due before the event. Refunds are not given on season or daily vendor fees. This just, we can't, we have 120 vendors, and if you're trying to pick and choose, we just bill all at once. And if there's a date that you can't make it, you're just going to have to eat that cost. Like, we're not going to refund.
Sure.
Right. That's just how it goes. It's fair. No subletting of booth space is permitted. Basically, that means if you're a full-time vendor and you know you're not going to be there, you can't have your cousin who's an artist set up in your spot without my permission. So
how does that work? So like,
Matt wants to know how that works. They can't hear you. So,
how bad? So if I say I want the year,
uh-huh.
and it's new Delta Visuals.
Right.
Okay. And if you can't go to that, somebody that's within my particular group,
Mm-hmm.
could you just be there?
You would have to get permission from me, basically, to have somebody set up in your spot.
So like say, I'm already approved.
Mm-hmm. That still has to go through me. Yeah.
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 Consider it that Stephanie is curating every weekend. So it may just, to you, it might make complete sense. I'm not going to be there. I'm going to have another artist that I know come in and take my spot. We want to make sure that we don't have 7 wood artists operating on that weekend. And Stephanie is the only one that knows what daily vendors are coming in and what aren't. So that's why she's going to want to know if you are going to be unable to go for a weekend, just let her know like the week before and say, I'm not going to be able to be here. I have another artist that is interested in coming. They sell A, B, C, and D. Is that okay? And I would go out on a limb and say 9 times out of 10, that will be okay. But we may run into a situation where it's adding a little bit too much.
And since we're in a situation where we have a part-time vendor list already queued up,
Yeah.
like I'm going to have a list of people who are going to want to set up in that spot anyway. And I need to be able to schedule people. That's on me, not on you. That
Yeah.
makes sense.
No,
Yeah.
So is there, if I request 2 spaces, is it discounted for 2, or is it still just a 15%?
So yeah, that's a great question. Matt asked if he has a double booth. So instead of $450, that price is doubled because the fees are based off of 10 by 10 spaces. But if you do pay before the 8th,
The whole 2 years or the whole year for 2.
you still get the discount.
Yeah, but is it a bigger discount?
No, it's still 15%.
But it's 15% of a bigger number, Matt. So
Right, so it's still more money off.
So you
yeah, it's $135 off of a $900 booth if you get 2 10 by 10s.
Stephanie had a question.
Yeah, so like say I unexpectedly get sick or something 1 week
So Stephanie had a great question. It's actually something we'll go over when we do the attendance policy. But if something happens and you know that you're going to be out of town, or if unexpectedly you get sick, we do allow people to work your booth for you. So if you have somebody that you trust who would be able to set up your stuff and be able to sell your artwork on your behalf, that's totally okay. But yeah, so back to Matt's original question, or back to the original point, was that there's no subletting. And I feel like we covered that pretty well, that I have a list of people who do want to be a part of the market. And those are the list, that's the list that is going to have access to that spot first. And Matt, if you know somebody who is interested in participating, like, they still need to fill out an application, they need to be approved by me, and then they would also get on that list.
Well, then you would. I'm not trying to be. So if I have. I'm trying.
We're gonna be here all night.
Yeah.
So.
The rule is you can't sublet your booth. End of story. Cool.
So even if I had somebody and you did say yes to that person, it's still another $15.
Right.
You still just
They're
need to
gonna
run
pay
it by Stephanie. That's all. You got to run it by Stephanie and make sure that she's
Right.
making the final decision.
Yes. But Matt's question was, does his fee cover that for that day? But the answer is no. Like, that daily vendor is still gonna have to pay that $15 to participate that day. So great. Booth sharing is permitted. So if you want to go in on a booth with another artist, that's totally fine. But again, they have to be an artist who has applied and who has gotten approved by me. And both parties have to adhere to the guidelines, and you have to pay a separate commission. So if there's two artists under one booth, you're only paying one booth fee, but you will have to pay two commissions. Yeah, and that makes sense. And then we already kind of talked about this, but if you do want 2 tents, that's something that you would have had to indicate on your application. And those are permitted at the discretion of the market manager. For the farmers market, we have a sales floor, meaning that they have to meet a certain sales requirement in order to qualify for a double booth. This market hasn't been around long enough to kind of know what that floor is. So in years to come, there are probably going to be restrictions on who we allow double booths for. Just because if an artist is taking up 2 booths, that means that somebody else might not be able to participate. So we want to make sure that we're being mindful of, making sure that that all artists have access to our events.
What are those criteria that you have for the farmers market to get a double booth in the next year?
It's a sales criteria.
Is that going to apply to the farmers market?
I just answered that. We don't.
hear.
I'm sorry. He asked if that would have, we don't have, this market is still new, that we don't know what that criteria is yet. We don't to have those types of restrictions yet. So, and we also have we haven't built up the demand of artists yet. So we're not having, so for the farmers market, I have 80 spots and I got 164 applications for the farmers market, which meant that I had to turn away a good chunk of people who wanted to participate. And so that's why we have criteria for double booths, just because we want to make sure that our events are equitable and that the people who want to participate have access to it. Right now, we don't have the same demand for the art market, meaning that we have 30 spaces and I've gotten maybe 50 applications, which is great because half of those are people who want to participate on a part-time basis. So we have a really good crew who are going to rotate. But once we get more demand for the art market, we are going to have to put certain criteria on double booth space.
Makes complete sense. You nailed that.
Right. Yeah. Commission compliance. So we charge a flat fee for the booth space, and then we also charge a commission based off of your sales. That commission payment is due before the next market date, and they must be paid weekly. We have run into situations with farmers market vendors and art market vendors where where vendors have become very behind on their commission payments. And we are basically going to be enforcing a rule that if you are late on your commission payments and there has been no attempt made to resolve those, that your participation in the market would be put on pause until you get caught up. So basically how that's going to look is, it's okay. Like I have farmers market vendors. I understand that we get caught up and sometimes we space on paying. But if I send you an email saying, hey, you're 3 weeks behind, and then I don't hear anything from you for 2 more weeks, and now you're 5 weeks behind, basically we're going to have a conversation where I say you can't show up and participate until you are made up on those payments. If there is a situation where you're saying like, hey, I can't pay this right now, like we can have a conversation one-on-one if there are if those things do come, if they happen. So don't feel like we're just trying to make sure that we get, that we're, I don't know what I'm trying to say. We're not trying to be sticklers, but we do need sales information just because we report to a board, and there are going to be decisions made that happen during the season. Something that we did for, like, there might be more promotion that we can do for the art market, and a lot of our budget for that does come from some of these commission payments. And so we want to make sure that we're having accurate sales data for our board, and we also want to make sure that we're making the best decisions for the market as a whole. So we want your commission payments on time, just because that's also how events are run. We can't have all of our vendors really behind on payments, because that doesn't. Anyway, I made my point. Does anybody have any questions about that?
I have a
Huh?
question.
Oh, Trish has
Yeah.
one. Go ahead, Trish.
So my question is, like, we do commission art sales, and I usually typically, I mean, it doesn't take me a hot minute to do a painting, but I mean, there have been times where, a painting may take me up to a month to do. What about those type of deals? Because that's all we do is commission. We never sell the paintings. Well, that's not true. Sometimes we do, but for the most part, we never sell the paintings that we show.
Oh,
That's
okay.
a good point,
Sorry.
'cause
We're
that's
talking about two different things here. So yes, in the artist world, you guys will have specific art people wanting specific paintings from you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about
So she's saying that
No.
the sale.
So I would say, Trish, when you get paid for the piece, that's when you should pay the commission on that. So even if you get a prepayment of, and I know every artist is different, but if it's Saturday and you sold $1,000 painting commission that you're doing, and they gave you $200 up front, then pay commission on the money you have in hand.
Yeah.
And then pay the remaining commission when you get paid the rest of that. We don't want you to pay commission on something that you weren't guaranteed payment. So just pay the commission on the money that you actually accept on that day.
Yep.
And then when you report your sales, report the sales of what you got that day, not what you're anticipating coming in, if that makes sense.
No, yeah. Sorry. Again, I haven't had that experience before.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted Andrew here, because he managed this last year.
In
That's a really
Stephanie's
good
world, when
point.
you buy pickles, you get the pickles that are on the table. So you're not buying pickles that you're going to get next week. So it's a little bit different. Does that make sense for all the artists, though? I just want to make sure that that's clear, because some of you will do commissions. And the only rule that I would say, and we use the honor system, obviously we do it on the art side and the farmers market side, but if you do for example, $1,000 painting, you did that deal at the market, then we would trust you that any money made on that sale, regardless of when that money comes in, you would pay a commission on that money when you receive that money. So, you know, you collected 200 up front, pay the 10% commission on the 200, and then 4 Fridays from now, you're dropping the rest of it off and they pay you for the rest of it. If you knew that that sale took place at the market, we would appreciate you going back on and filling out a commission for the remaining balance that you collected.
So that makes total sense. So it's probably a good thing for anybody that does commission sales like we do to take a certain percentage up front this year. And
Mm.
that way that's the way I understand it. I think it's a great idea and a great way to do that.
I would
Okay.
agree with that. It's a good business practice.
I did not hear that, and I apologize.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, we're good. I think we're
No,
good.
no, no. Cool. Yeah.
And I have a quick question.
Yes.
Hey, what if we don't sell anything on particular day? And do we still have to mention that like 0 sales or how does that work?
So
Yeah, I would go in on the form and submit submit 0, just because if you don't, then we might read that as you haven't tried to make a payment.
Yeah.
So if you've made 0, like we could see that as you being late on a payment, just because there's nothing there in our books. So if you do have a day where there is 0 sales, just please go in and submit that, so that we have record. That
Okay,
saves you some headaches.
that's
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. Okay, thanks.
Stephanie, I noticed it's not on this. It may be in a future slide. That were you going to touch on the tax forms?
Yes, I am.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Just hold your horses. More exciting things to come. Oh, another question.
Sorry. Is there like 6% of that on? Where's the part? Is there a certain like 6%?
Yes. Yep. So she asked about commission rates, which is great because it's a segue to my next point. So we have 2 different commission rates. So if you have a price point of $50 or less, then you pay 5% commission. If you have a average price point of $51 or more, you're going to pay a 10% commission rate. So that's not based on your weekly sales. That's based on your average price point. So if you look at your inventory, if you set up your tent and you're looking at all the stuff that you have for sale, if you averaged out everything on your booth, and if you average that out and it was less than 50, you pay 5%. If it was more than 51, you're going to pay 10%.
I think we got it.
I had some farmers who did not understand that, and that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So Andrew, do you want to answer the
Sure. What was the question?
inspiration behind that? Yeah.
Oh, what was the inspiration behind that? Oh, we do evaluations on all of the art markets and the farmers markets in this region so that we can stay competitive, but then also equitable and fair. And we have noticed that there are quite a lot of markets that initiate different commissions or vendor fees based on your total sales. We didn't think doing that really made sense. We kind of did it more on the average price of what you're producing, because the theory behind that would be the higher the cost, the more work went into the production of it. And we felt that by doing an average price, that was the most fair way to put a commission rate based on above and beyond, or above and below a $50 threshold.
Cool.
It actually didn't change anything, surprisingly, from last year. So last year, when we were kind of testing out all these markets, we had the farmers market did a 5% across the board, and the artists did a 10% across the board. And when we kind of went in and really identified the numbers and the production, and we initiated this change, it really only affected, I want to say, 3 to 5 vendors out of 130. So we just kind of think that this is a pretty easy model to maintain moving forward. Something that we ran into a little bit last year was if there was an open spot on the market side and there was an art vendor that wanted to go over there, are they going to pay the 5% commission because they're technically in the farmer's market, or are they going to pay a 10% commission because they're technically in an art market? And what is the definition of an art market? Is it jewelry? Is it wood? Is it painting? Is it sculpting? Like there's not a lot of black and white lines. So we said in order to put black and white lines in, we would do it based on the price point, the average price point of what the seller is selling.
Cool. The last point on this slide that I want to make is that we use your sales for planning. Your individual vendor sales will not be released. We keep that information private. That's between you and us. So your neighbors aren't going to know what your sales are unless you tell them. Also, this, like I think I touched on this before, that we do hold the right to remove artists from participating if there's been absolutely no attempt to make any payments. So yeah.
Or
If you
sales. I
communicate-
mean, we get asked a lot, how do we know that the vendors are being honest? If you don't sell well, you're not going to be invited to participate again next year. So that is the motivation, to be honest about what your sales reports are. We also do not provide, I don't know if I'm even supposed to say this, but we do not provide lists to the state of the artists that are participating. We haven't been asked to do that. I don't know legally if that's a gray area. If the state ever asked me for lists, we would have our lawyer answer that question. And I don't know what the law says, if we have to give the lists or we don't. So it's the responsibility of each artist to fill out a tax form for every market that they participate in. But it was, if you miss a week, I know there was an artist that came up to me once and they were like, oh my goodness, I forgot to put that in. Don't get upset with me. And I'm like, I don't know if you put them in or you don't. It does not go through us as the event coordinators. It's directly between you and the state when it comes to that.
Yeah, Andrew did not hold his horses, and he skipped ahead to talk about sales tax reporting. Basically what we are going to do is that the state is going to send us a form that we print off and we hand you, and then it's up to you to fill out that form, write your sales tax check, and mail it back to them. And that's all I know. That's all I'm gonna say on it, because that's seriously all I understand. Like, we were on the phone with them for like an hour and a half, and I was like, I don't understand this at all. But
some of you
like
may do
Andrew
it
said,
quarterly. Some of you may do it weekly. We're told that you're supposed to do it weekly at the end of every event. I've never been held to that. I've never held artists to that. But however you do your taxes and you feel comfortable doing it, that's great. On our end, we will give you a form on every Saturday for the Saturday that you were there, and then it's your responsibility to submit that.
and if you have any questions about that process or what taxes are in general, it is our recommendation that you contact a tax professional, because we are not legally allowed to give tax advice. Also, you do not want tax advice from me, especially.
No.
So yes, basically we will print off this form. It has the date on it. There's the state does a special code. Each market has its own code or whatever. So that's why you can't use the week before's paper it's basically, we're going to hand you a paper. You're going to fill it out, write a check, mail it to the state. That's it.
Perfect.
I really hope there's no questions.
Yep.
Are there
I was
questions?
about to ask, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's
No, that's
okay.
okay.
So let's say I have participated in like all the Saturdays, and I also participated Sundays in some other places, right?
Mhm.
Okay. So here, whatever the sales that I'm doing it here on Saturdays, uh, shall I just, so I'm going to just do this, fill this form, and but we usually we file it by monthly, right?
It really comes up to the vendors and some vendors do monthly reports, I think, some do quarterly, and then some do every event that they're part of. So I don't have the answer for that one.
Okay, yeah, as of now, I have done monthly reports for the
Okay.
sales tax. As whatever the events that I go, but I included everything together and I reported that this year.
Okay. I mean, it sounds like you're doing everything that you need to do, which ultimately is what the state wants to get their hands on. So as long as they're getting it, I think you're in the clear.
Okay. Okay. So when you said the different markets have a different, sorry, let's say
They
this
do.
Saturday has a different number, or this next Saturday will have a different number.
They do.
So
So
will that make
every event that you're participating in would most likely have its own identifying number from the state. So if you're not getting sales tax forms from other events that you're participating in, I would ask them about that.
Okay,
Because
so but we actually mentioned if it is if the event is in Bentonville or like Springdale or something like that, if it is from a different city,
it could be because it could have a different tax rate.
Tax rates, right? But I don't know much about the particular event name or number, so maybe it's something that I have to focus on.
Yeah, for other events, I would definitely ask if you're participating. For our events, we'll give you that form and it'll have that number on it already. And we get that form every week from the state.
Okay.
And even if you have zeros for that, they would want you to return that anyway.
Right. Right.
So,
That's what I understood last year.
yes.
If I file it through you guys, like let's say I'm filling that form and sending that to state, do I have to enter it again from my side when I do the monthly, or do
I
I?
don't believe so, or then you may be paying twice. So I think you would only enter
Yeah.
that information once.
Okay.
Yeah, you're not filing through us.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Just using that form.
Yep.
Right.
And you want to make sure that you're just recording it to the state one time, not multiple
Got it.
times. They'll look at it as multiple revenues.
Yeah. Right. Right.
I'm not going to
Okay.
say anything.
Yeah.
I am just, I feel like sometimes the state, I deal with the health department a lot. And I feel like when you talk to one person, you hear other things than you would from another person. I know tax law is a lot different than health code. But yeah, sometimes you talk to one person and you hear something completely different from another. So
Okay.
that's all I got. All right, we're moving on.
Thanks.
But if you guys
Thank you.
do have more questions about taxes, call Andrew. But yeah, he's not legally allowed to give you tax advice. So something that we need to mention is that on October 22nd, there is going to be a large gravel ride, which is a bicycling event. They are coming to downtown Bentonville and they are very, very excited to be using the square as their finish line. So basically what that means for us is that we have to share the square and we don't know exactly what that looks like. So they are still working with the city to figure out where their finish line is going to be. But what this means for you guys is that we will have a new map and new locations for everybody. Yeah. Yep, it's just that weekend, October 22nd. Yep. And this falls under the category of we are going to ask you to set up in a new spot because of market cohesion. But this is a very, very large event. I think, Andrew, you said that it's like the largest gravel ride in the world or something.
It is.
ridiculous
It's
like that.
it has one of the largest winning pots as well. It's $250,000 worth of prizes. So you'll see racers from all over the world coming to this. It'll be nationally televised, internationally televised. And they really want that iconic background. So chances are the finish line will be around the mark of the Five and Dime Cafe or the Walton Museum. It'll be along Main Street right there. And then the stage for the awards will probably be in front of the courthouse. So for that one weekend, we'll be scattered into new spots. Load in and load out will be a little bit hectic, but there'll be about 2,500 additional shoppers on the square that morning. So hopefully we'll see sales increase pretty significantly.
So if you guys decide that you don't want to be an artist this year and you want to be a gravel ride bike rider, you have until October 22nd to train to potentially win the $250,000 kitty. So, yep. Okay, so we're going to go over the attendance policy, and this is for full-time vendors. There are going to be some points for part-time vendors, but if you're a full-time vendor, this is kind of for you. I am going to try to speed through this because I know that we're getting close to 8. But again, this has been a great meeting because we wanted to have this back and forth conversation, because if I can be clear on the front end, that helps all of us out. So the attendance policy, this is in the guidelines. So hopefully this isn't new information. You should have already read over this. But basically a no call, no show, that's basically where you're on the schedule and you don't show up and you didn't tell me that you weren't coming. That's just bad. Don't do that. If you know that you're going to be gone, you need to at least give me 48 hours notice. And again, the reason is because I need to fill your spot. Obviously, if there's an emergency situation, your car broke down, something crazy has happened. I don't need to be the first call that you make. Your car breaks down, call 911. But at least some point during the day, if you can make an attempt to reach out to me and just say, hey, something came up, I'm so sorry I can't be there, that would be great. So yeah, just make sure if you're not going to be there, you tell me. Excused absences. So that is defined as anything outside of your control. So I have getting COVID on there. That's 2020 guidelines right there. So if there's an emergency, if I have natural disaster, sorry, I deal with a lot of farmers. So if a tornado hits your farm and you can't come to the farmer's market, that's excused. For an artist in the artist world, right, if your trailer gets stolen, that happened to Matt, that would be, and he wouldn't be able to come to the market because he didn't have any paintings. That would be classified as an excused absence. Unexcused absences, those are qualify for anything that's inside your control. So if you have a planned family vacation, that would be an unexcused absence. If you have other shows that you're going to, that would qualify as an unexcused absence. You are permitted 3 within the market season. I get some pushback on this attendance policy, and I think that's because people feel like I'm going to be extremely strict about it. And honestly, the reason that we created an attendance policy is because one needs to exist. You guys, vendors need to know what the expectations are. But I also understand that there are incredibly large art shows that happen around the United States in Arkansas, and you have the potential to be making a lot more money if you go to one of those events. I get that. But if you have those events scheduled every other weekend and you've applied to be a full-time vendor, you've just created a lot more work for me because I've been planning to have you in that spot and now I have to fill it. So these unexcused absences, basically, if you look at your schedule and you know that you have a lot of other things planned, it might make more sense for you to be a part-time vendor rather than a full-time vendor. I say this to my farmers market vendors, it's really clear to me, the vendors who want to participate in our events and who are passionate about downtown Bentonville and serving our community, And then it's also really clear for the people who are like, and I know that the people who are passionate and who want to show up, like they don't want to miss the market. There are, this is again, a very, very select few, but there are some vendors who are going to want to abuse the attendance policy, and that is also very clear. So these excused absences, I don't want this to scare any of you guys. Like, I don't want you to think, oh my gosh, I have 3 unexcused absences, I'm done, like they're never gonna let me back in. No, like I know that, I mean, I have vacations, I have things planned, and I might miss more than 3 Saturdays over the summer, and that's fine. But those are just things that we need to know from an organization standpoint. So yeah,
Stephanie, have you talked about modified markets?
that's coming. Oh my
Okay.
gosh, why are you trying to speed me
I feel
along?
like he's just looking at the presentation.
I know. Are you skipping ahead? So yeah, are there any questions about weather? That's coming up, Matt. Oh my gosh, I just said that. Okay, I will go to the next slide and then I will take questions. A modified market. Oh my gosh, what is that? So that happens when there is bad weather predictions. So obviously, you guys are you're very different than my farmers, because a farmer, their stuff can get rained on, and that's totally okay. Your stuff can't get rained on, because that would be very bad. So if there are weather predictions that are calling for 100% chance of rain or 100% chance of thunderstorms, we will call a modified market. And basically that means that it's up to you if you want to risk attending. So it won't count as an unexcused absence if you decide not to come if we have called a modified market. I will say that our farmers market is a rain or shine event. And normally how I make that call, like the criteria, is that if it's over 60% chance of rain, I'm most likely going to call a modified market. And then if it's like thunderstorms, like if there's higher percentage of thunderstorms, then I'm more than likely going to call a modified market. We make that call at around 4 p.m. on Fridays. But I would highly, highly recommend that you make the decision to attend or not in the morning. Just because the weather around here changes like on a dime. At 4 p.m. on a Friday, it'll say it's 100% chance of thunderstorms at 8 a.m. And then at 5 p.m. on a Friday, it's 0% chance of thunderstorms. So I would try to make that call in the morning. A lot of times it looks like it's going to be terrible, and then the times for the thunderstorm get pushed back throughout the day. And some days I have called modified markets and it has been the most glorious weather out. It's insane and it drives me crazy. If you are not coming,
yes, Stephanie, I think it's important to note that we do not publicly say what we're doing. So,
right,
you know, we made that decision last year that we don't let the public know if we're calling a modified market, because we don't want to discourage the public from coming. So just so you all are aware of that also.
That's just an internal word, an internal phrase that we use to the general public. We're a rain or shine market. We will always set up no matter what. Unless there's an active tornado on square, then we're not going to be there. But so I would just pretend that you are on Friday, pack up all your stuff. On Saturday, wake up, look at the weather, and make your decision then. If you decide not to come, you need to contact me and let me know that you're not coming. This is just because if I know that 80% of my artists aren't going to make it, for the 20% who are going to show up, I'm going to want to move everybody forward on that street or integrate them into the farmers market footprint. So I need to know if you're going to be there or not, just from a planning standpoint, the morning of, because I don't want somebody at the very top of the street, and then there's 6 empty spaces, somebody else set up, and then another 6 empty spaces. That looks bad, and it's not going to be fun for the people participating if there's a bunch of holes in the market. So if you're not going to be there, you need to let me know. Pop-up storms, that's something that we have dealt with because we live in Arkansas. And that is pretty self-explanatory what that is, where there's nothing on the radar and then all of a sudden there's a bunch of wind and rain. You are free to make the decision to pack up and leave. However, this is going to be tricky because, again, I know you guys are you are in a different category with all of your art and all of the stuff that's very fragile and breakable. But if you are making the decision to tear down, and just try to be mindful of your neighbors, because your neighbor might not want to leave. They might want to stay. And if you bring your car in, that signals to shoppers, oh, like they're tearing down. So just try to be really mindful of that. We try to make those decisions as a group. So if 90% of the vendors are saying, hey, I want to pack up and leave, then we like move the road barriers and you can bring your cars in. But if 80% of the people want to stay, you're still free to pack up your stuff, but you might have to load that to your car rather than bringing your car inside the footprint. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. Does anybody have any questions about the attendance policy?
So I drive in from out of town.
Uh-huh.
So I would pretty much probably have to make the decision the night before if something happens, weather-wise, because then I need to cancel hotels.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, but that's okay.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
we need to-
Right. She was saying that she's a vendor who you live farther away, and so she has to make hotel accommodations. It's okay to say you're not going to come on a Friday night. It's just my personal recommendation that you wait until Saturday morning, just because of the weather. Like, the weather is so finicky. I don't want you guys to miss out on a day that could actually be beautiful, just because we made a call based off of the best information we had at the time. Yeah. So showing up late, don't do it. That's basically this slide. You are required to be in your spot and ready to sell at 7:20, and we do not allow cars or trailers into the market footprint past 7:15 a.m. That's just because of safety. Around 7:15, 7:30, that's when people start showing up to start shopping the market and the art market, and we don't want cars still pulling in and unloading and all of that. We want all of that to be done by 7:15. So if you do show up late, it's okay. Like, you can still participate in the market. Again, it just means that you're going to have to load your stuff into the footprint by hand. You're not going to be able to drive your car up to your spot. This more applies to farmers market vendors. I apologize. But if you do have an employee who is going to be running your booth, that's totally okay. You're allowed to have people who are authorized to sell for you. But just make sure that all of your employees understand the guidelines as well. They are your representative at the market, so they need to know what all the rules and guidelines and regulations are, because you will be held accountable for their actions. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Does anybody have any last minute questions? I know we're kind of up against time.
Is
Yeah.
Matt going to buy the first round after the first market?
Matt, are you buying the first round after the first market?
Yes.
He said yes. So we are all here as
I
witnesses.
think this was a great presentation.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, yes.
No, I meant to let them know that I was a compliment.
Oh, Matt wants you to know that he complimented us.
I need all the kudos I can get.
Cindy, what was your question?
As a first time vendor, and those that have already done it, can you explain to me like a typical day in a short, just a few sentences?
It's amazing.
Okay. And another thing is, I've been to the market last year with the art market, And sometimes I didn't see anybody under a tent that was selling art. The art was there, but no person. So, what I was gonna ask is, are there rules about, or do you wander around and see other people? You know, are we free to do that, or we have to stay put in our tent?
Yeah. So Cindy asked if you're allowed to leave your tent.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, if you want to. Cindy said that she's been to the art market and that there were times where she didn't see people under her tent. I feel like that might have been people from the gallery. There were times where people who had art set up in the gallery, they were making sales inside the gallery and then also outside at their tent. Hopefully we won't have those instances happening as much just because we're going to be right next to the gallery. But yeah.
But
Does anybody paint while they're selling?
Yes.
Yeah.
Rich always paints.
Yeah.
And do you have to stay within your 10 feet tent with that easel or whatever you're doing?
You don't want to interrupt other people's space.
So you don't get out of it.
I mean, no, yeah, I think you can. It's not, you're not on
Right.
lockdown, you know, but just be courteous, you know, it's only 5 feet from the next person.
It's different, the field was different than what we're about to have.
Yeah.
It was just wide open. It was like a
Yeah.
farm.
Cindy was asking about live painting and if that could happen outside of the tent. And obviously, yes, you just need to be respectful of your neighbors.
Yeah, it's going to be a fluid situation since this is a new area for us. I mean, Stephanie and I actually have thought about putting some of you in the middle of the street as well, since
Yes.
the street is closed. So, you know, we may move some things after we get started if we hear recommendations from you all. This is a new area. We haven't done this for First Friday. We haven't done it for art. So we're going to try something new. For those of you that do participate in First Friday, we're probably going to have a very similar setup. Maybe not for April, because April's a little bit different for us, but in May through October, this will probably be an artist area as well. You know, Tracy runs those events, and her and I are kind of talking about that currently, about whether we're going to integrate the artists into the massive footprint and not have a section, or have a section like we do with the farmers market. So we're very interested in hearing your feedback once we get a couple weeks into this.
Yeah. And I think that that's a really important note just about the fluidity of our events. We try very hard to have the logistics and the operations behind that run smoothly and run seamlessly. I mean, that's why we're having this meeting right now, is we want you guys to have all the information that we have. But just be aware that things are going to change. And then also, I mean, be respectful of Sydney, of the people who are DBI representatives on site. If you're setting up your tent and it's in somebody else's space and we come over and we're like, hey, can you move? Or if you're painting and, you know, like, just try to be as respectful and as accommodating. You know, we are all in this together. I don't want the market to be a place where there's a bunch of unhealthy competition. I know we can all coexist and we can all, we're all very talented, and yeah, we're not competing against one another. We can all lift each other up. So yeah, just be respectful, especially if there's DBI representatives telling you like, hey, week 1, it might look like this, but week 2, it might be a little bit different. Cool. So this is the feedback form. That is the link, very small. I'm gonna see if I can copy it and put it in the, I can't. I will send that out to you guys who are on Zoom. If you're here in the room, you can actually hold your phone up to that QR code and that will get you the link to that form. That's just to answer some of those questions that I posed earlier about rotating spots for sessions. Should we have staggered load-in times? All of that. And excuse me, I'm drinking a Dr. Pepper. Carbonation. Shouldn't be doing that during a presentation. I will let you guys know what those results are. Thank you, Andrew. Yeah, just because I don't want to be making decisions that aren't conducive to a majority of you guys. we want you guys to be making some of those decisions as well. But yeah, if you guys have any last minute questions, I'm gonna stick around for a couple minutes. If you are on the Zoom, feel free to email me, call me. My last point, which I feel like I've already made, but yes, if you email me, I correspond with a lot of people. And if you don't hear back from me, just email me again. Sometimes I read emails and then my baby starts crying and I forget that I didn't respond to it. You're never going to bug me by over communicating with me, especially if you do need something from me. So feel free to email is really the best way. And that's how I primarily communicate. I know that some people prefer phone calls, prefer text messages, but I can't be emailing 90% and then calling the other 10%. So yeah, just keep an eye on your email. Email is the best way to get a hold of me, but you can for sure call me or text me. But yeah, I feel like there was another point I wanted to make. But yeah, oh yeah, just make sure to also read the emails that I send out. This isn't necessarily directed at this group, but I feel like a lot of times I send out emails where all the information is listed, like with the commission link, with the map, and I'll inevitably get an email back saying, oh, where's the map? Oh, where's the commission link? Just make sure to be thorough when you're reading these communications. That's all I got.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you guys for being on Zoom. Yeah, we're really excited. It's going to be a great season.
I am too.
Matt is also excited.
Yeah, it's funny. Almost every single rule that we have in place is thanks to Matt. So we're glad he enjoyed tonight's presentation.
Thank you, man.
We're going to be
Thanks,
holding
Sydney.
him to it.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew.
Thank you, Donna. We'll see you soon.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.